The rain fell like bullets against the prison gates. Not the gentle kind that washes things clean, the violent kind that drowns secrets deeper into the earth. Eva Monroe stood at the release checkpoint, her single duffel bag clutched in trembling hands. 28 years old. 10 years stolen. One hearing aid in her left ear, a permanent reminder of the night her life shattered. The guard handed her a manila envelope. "Your belongings, Monroe. You're free to go." Free. The word tasted like poison. She stepped through those gates into a world that had moved on without her. Cars looked different. Phones looked different. Even the air smelled different, like she'd been buried alive and dug herself out into someone else's timeline. But Eva hadn't come back to adjust. She'd come back to destroy. Her fingers traced the edge of a photograph she'd kept hidden for a decade, folded, worn, stained with tears and rage. It showed 5 people at a garden party, herself at 18, radiant and naive. Marcus Langston, the man she'd loved with every fiber of her being, his sister Claire, who'd been her best friend, their mother, Vivian Langston, elegant and cold, and Natasha Crane, the family's trusted assistant, always hovering in the background like a shadow. One of them had framed her. One of them had destroyed her. And Eva was going to find out which one. She tucked the photo away, pulled her hood up against the rain, and whispered to herself, "I'm coming home, Langstons, and this time you won't see me coming." The Langston estate hadn't changed. 3 weeks after her release, Eva stood at the servants' entrance, her hair dyed darker, her posture carefully slouched, her resume carefully falsified. She'd applied under a different name, Evelyn Morris, a housekeeper with stellar references, all forged, all untraceable. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, barely looked at her. "You can start Monday. We need someone who can work quietly. The family values discretion." "I'm very good at being invisible," Eva said softly. "If only you knew how true that is." Her first day back inside the mansion felt surreal. Every corner whispered memories. The grand staircase where Marcus first kissed her. The library where they'd spent hours talking about the future. The garden where she'd been arrested, screaming her innocence while security dragged her away. She was dusting the main hallway when she heard his voice. "Mrs. Chen, have the files for the Singapore deal been—" Marcus Langston stopped mid-sentence. Eva kept her head down, but her heart hammered so violently she thought it might burst through her chest. He was older now, 32. The boyish softness had hardened into sharp angles. Jaw, cheekbones, eyes that had seen too much and felt too little. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her entire legal defense had. "Who's this?" Marcus asked, his tone flat, businesslike. Mrs. Chen stepped forward. "The new housekeeper, sir. Evelyn Morris. She's replacing Sandra." Marcus's gaze swept over Eva with all the interest of someone examining furniture. No recognition. No spark. Nothing. 10 years ago, he'd told her she was his soulmate. Now, she was invisible. "Fine," he muttered, already turning away. "Just keep her away from my office." When he disappeared around the corner, Eva's hands were shaking so badly she dropped her duster. Mrs. Chen picked it up, studying her with concern. "Are you all right, dear?" Eva forced a smile. "Just nervous. First day." But inside, something was cracking. She'd prepared for this moment, rehearsed it 1,000 times in her cell. She'd told herself she was ready. She wasn't. Because seeing Marcus Langston look through her like she'd never existed hurt worse than the 10 years in prison. That night, Eva began her real work. The mansion went quiet after midnight. She slipped out of her small room in the servants' quarters, moving through shadows like a ghost. Her target: Marcus's private study. She'd memorized the security system during her teenage years when she'd had free run of the house. Most of it hadn't changed. The Langstons were confident in their fortress, arrogant in their safety. The study door opened with a soft click. Moonlight spilled across mahogany furniture and walls lined with leather-bound books. Everything looked exactly as she remembered, except for one thing. A large portrait now hung above the fireplace. Marcus and Natasha Crane, engaged. The announcement plaque read, "Together, we build empires." Eva's stomach twisted. Natasha, quiet, efficient Natasha, who'd worked for the family for over 15 years, who'd always watched Eva with those calculating eyes, who'd been there the night of the accusation, standing beside Vivian Langston, nodding along with every lie. And now she was going to marry Marcus. Eva tore her gaze away and moved to the desk. She needed evidence, anything that could point to who had planted that necklace in her bag 10 years ago. Financial records, emails, old security footage. A floorboard creaked behind her. She froze. Looking for something? Eva spun around. Claire Langston stood in the doorway, arms crossed, face unreadable. Marcus's sister. Eva's former best friend. The girl who testified against her in court. I was just... Eva's mind raced, her hand instinctively moving to adjust her hearing aid, a nervous habit she'd developed. Claire's eyes narrowed at the gesture. For a terrible moment, silence stretched between them. Then Claire stepped inside and closed the door behind her. "Relax," she said quietly. "I'm not going to call security." Eva's breath came out shaky. "Then what are you going to do?" Claire moved closer, studying her face in the dim light. "I'm going to ask you one question, and I want the truth." Eva's pulse thundered in her ears. "Are you here to hurt my brother?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Eva could lie, should lie. But something in Claire's expression, exhausted, haunted, desperate, made her pause. "I'm here," Eva said carefully, "to find out what really happened 10 years ago." Claire's face didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Something that looked almost like relief. "Good," Claire whispered, "because I think we were all lied to." The revelation stunned Eva. They sat in Claire's private sitting room, a space Eva had only been in once before, the night before her arrest, when they'd stayed up late talking about dreams and futures that would never come. "I never believed you stole that necklace," Claire said, pouring tea with shaking hands. "But Mother was so certain. The evidence was overwhelming. Your fingerprints, the necklace hidden in your apartment, that letter you supposedly wrote." "I didn't write any letter," Eva interrupted, her voice hard. "I know." Claire met her eyes. "Because 3 years ago I found something." She pulled out her phone, scrolling through saved photos until she found one. She handed it to Eva. It was a bank statement. Natasha Crane's name at the top, and a deposit dated 2 weeks before Eva's arrest. $250,000, transferred from an offshore account registered to Vivian Langston. Eva's blood turned to ice. "Your mother paid Natasha." "I think so, but I don't know why, and I don't know what for." Claire's voice cracked. "I've been trying to figure it out for years, but Mother controls everything in this house. Finances, security, even Marcus. He does whatever she says." "Why didn't you tell him about this?" Claire laughed bitterly. "Because I'm a coward. Because Mother threatened to cut me off completely if I ever questioned the past. Because Marcus..." She trailed off, pain flooding her face. He's never been the same since you left. He's hollow, and Natasha. She just slithered right into that emptiness. Ava's hands clenched around the phone. Every instinct screamed that Natasha was the key, but she needed more than a bank statement. She needed proof of the conspiracy. "I need access to your mother's private files," Ava said. Claire paled. "That's impossible. Her office is locked. Biometric security. Cameras." "Not impossible," Ava cut in. "Just dangerous." They stared at each other. Finally, Claire nodded. "Tell me what you need." The plan was insane. Vivian Langston hosted a charity gala every year, a massive event where the city's elite gathered to pretend they cared about the poor. It was scheduled for Friday, 3 days away. During the chaos, while Vivian played hostess and security focused on the guests, Claire would create a diversion. And Eva would break into Vivian's office. But there was a complication. Marcus. He'd been watching her. Eva noticed it on Tuesday, the way his gaze lingered when she passed. Wednesday, he'd struck up a conversation, asking where she was from, how she liked working there. Nothing invasive, just curious. Thursday morning, he cornered her in the garden. "Evelyn." She turned, heart racing. Marcus stood there, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. Behind him, roses bloomed wild and red, the same roses that had witnessed her arrest. "Yes, Mr. Langston." "You remind me of someone." His voice was soft, almost confused. Eva's throat tightened. "I have one of those faces, I suppose." "No." He stepped closer. "It's not your face. It's the way you move, the way you touched your ear just now when you got nervous." His eyes searched hers. "I knew someone who did that." Panic flared. She couldn't let him figure it out. Not yet. Not before she had proof. "I'm sorry," she said, forcing herself to sound puzzled. "I don't understand." "Eva." Her name, spoken like a prayer, like a curse. Her entire world stopped. Marcus was staring at her with wide, horrified eyes, as if he'd just seen a ghost claw its way out of the grave. "It's you," he breathed. "Oh God, it's you." Everything unraveled in seconds. Marcus grabbed her arm, not roughly, but desperately, like she might vanish if he let go. "How?" "They said everyone said you ran away after—" He couldn't finish the sentence. His face was a storm of emotions, shock, confusion, pain, and something else. Something that looked like hope. Eva wrenched her arm free, years of rage flooding to the surface. "They lied," she hissed. "I didn't run anywhere, Marcus. I went to prison, 10 years. 10 years for a crime I didn't commit, while you—" Her voice broke. "While you moved on." "Prison." He looked like she'd struck him. No, that's not—" "Mother said you were gone, that you'd left a letter confessing—" "I never wrote a letter." Eva's voice rose, raw and furious. "I was 18 years old, Marcus. I loved you. I would have died for you, and your family destroyed me." Marcus stumbled backward, his face draining of color. "I didn't know. Eva, I swear to God, I didn't know." "You didn't care to know," she shot back. "You just believed whatever convenient lie they fed you." "That's not fair." "Fair?" Eva laughed, and it sounded broken. "You want to talk about fair? I lost a decade of my life, my hearing, my future, everything. And you—" She gestured at the mansion, at his expensive suit, at the life he still had. "You got engaged to the woman who helped frame me." Marcus went very still. "What did you just say?" "Natasha." Ava's voice turned cold. "Your precious fiancée. She was part of it." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." Eva pulled out her phone, showing him the bank statement Claire had shared. Your mother paid her $250,000 2 weeks before I was arrested. You think that's a coincidence? Marcus stared at the screen, his breathing shallow. She could see the war happening behind his eyes. Belief versus denial. Love versus betrayal. Finally, he looked up at her. If what you're saying is true, it is. Then I need you to prove it. His jaw tightened. Tomorrow night. The gala. We'll get into my mother's office together. Ava blinked. You'd go against your own mother? If she did what you're saying, then she's not the person I thought she was. Marcus's voice hardened with determination. And I need to know the truth. We both do. For the first time in 10 years, Ava saw a glimmer of the boy she'd loved. But she couldn't trust it. Not yet. Fine, she said. But if you're lying to me, if this is some kind of trap, it's not. Marcus reached for her hand, then stopped himself, aware of the chasm between them. I just want the truth, Ava. That's all. She nodded once. Tomorrow, then. As she walked away, Ava's hands were shaking. Because she'd just made an alliance with the man who'd broken her heart. And she had no idea if she'd survive it. The night of the gala. The mansion transformed into something out of a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers blazed. A string quartet played Vivaldi. Guests in designer gowns and tuxedos floated through the halls like expensive ghosts, sipping champagne and discussing investments. Ava watched from the shadows, dressed in a server's uniform, a tray of canapes balanced on her hand. She blended perfectly, just another faceless worker in a sea of opulence. But her eyes never stopped tracking. Vivian Langston held court in the grand ballroom, her silver gown shimmering, her laugh practiced and perfect. Every inch the matriarch, the philanthropist, the woman who'd built an empire on lies. Natasha Crane clung to Marcus's arm like a beautiful parasite, her diamond ring catching the light. She was radiant tonight, dark hair swept up, crimson dress hugging every curve. The perfect future, Mrs. Langston. And Marcus looked miserable. Eva caught his eye across the room. He gave her the smallest nod. It's time. Claire created the diversion at exactly 9:47 p.m. She accidentally knocked over a champagne tower near the main entrance, causing a spectacular crash that sent servers and guests scrambling. Security rushed over. Vivian's attention snapped to the chaos. Eva and Marcus slipped away in opposite directions, meeting at the concealed service hallway that led to Vivian's private wing. The security code changes weekly, Marcus whispered as they moved through the shadows. But I know where she keeps the current one. He led her to a hidden panel behind a portrait of his late father. Inside was a small safe. Marcus's fingers flew across the keypad, a code Eva recognized. His father's birthday. The safe opened. Inside was a single piece of paper with a 6-digit number. They moved quickly to Vivian's office. The biometric scanner blinked red, waiting for authorization. Marcus pressed his thumb against it. Access denied. Eva's heart sank. She changed the authorization? She must have suspected something. Marcus's face was grim. He tried again. Same result. Then a cold voice cut through the darkness behind them. Looking for this? They spun around. Vivian Langston stood there, holding a small remote, the manual override for her office. Her face was eerily calm, but her eyes burned with fury. I knew you'd come eventually, she said, looking at Eva. I just didn't expect my own son to betray me. Marcus stepped forward. Mother, I need to know the truth. Did you frame Eva? Frame? Vivian laughed. cold and sharp. Such a dramatic word. I simply removed an obstacle. The confirmation hit like a physical blow. Eva's voice shook with rage. Why? What did I ever do to you? You existed, Vivian said simply. You were a maid's daughter, Eva. Do you really think I would let my son throw away his future on you? The Langston name, our legacy, our business connections, all of it would have been jeopardized by a scandal like that. So you destroyed her life instead? Marcus's voice cracked with disbelief. I protected this family, Vivian snapped. I did what was necessary. And yes, Natasha helped. She was quite useful, actually. Planting the necklace, forging that letter in Eva's handwriting, making sure the evidence was airtight. Eva felt like she was drowning. You ruined me for nothing. For your pride. For everything. Vivian's face was ice. And I'd do it again. Marcus looked at his mother like he'd never seen her before. You're a monster! No, darling, Vivian smiled. I'm a mother who loves her son enough to make the hard choices. She raised her hand, revealing the phone she'd been holding. And now I'm going to make another one. She pressed a button. Alarms blared through the mansion. Within seconds, security flooded the hallway. These two are trespassers, Vivian announced calmly. Attempting to break into my private office. Call the police. Eva's blood ran cold. Marcus grabbed her hand. Run. They ran. Through servants' passages, down hidden staircases, Eva's knowledge of the mansion's secret routes, learned during her years working there, became their only advantage. Security shouted behind them. Flashlight beams sliced through darkness. This way! Eva yanked Marcus through a concealed door that led to the old wine cellar. They plunged into musty darkness, their breathing harsh and panicked. Above them, footsteps thundered. Marcus pulled out his phone, his face illuminated by the screen's glow. I recorded everything she said. We have her confession. It won't matter if we're arrested before we can use it. Eva was thinking fast, desperately. Your mother owns half the police force. We need to get this public before... The cellar door burst open. But it wasn't security. It was Natasha. She stood at the top of the stairs, elegant and poised, a gun in her perfectly manicured hand. Well, she said softly, isn't this romantic? Star-crossed lovers, reunited in a wine cellar? How poetic. Marcus stepped in front of Eva. Natasha, put the gun down. Oh, Marcus. Natasha descended the stairs slowly, her heels clicking against stone. You were always so naive. Did you really think I loved you? She laughed. I loved your name, your money, your connections. You were just a means to an end. Why? Marcus's voice was hoarse. Why would you do this? Because Vivian offered me everything I ever wanted, Natasha said simply. Security, status, power. All I had to do was help get rid of one insignificant girl. Her eyes flicked to Eva. No offense. You destroyed my life, Eva said, her voice deadly quiet. I improved mine. Natasha shrugged. But now you've come back and complicated things. So I'm going to fix it. One bullet for each of you, a tragic murder-suicide. Scorned ex-lover kills the man who betrayed her, then herself. Vivian will be devastated, of course. But she'll recover. She always does. She raised the gun. Eva moved on pure instinct. She grabbed a wine bottle from the rack beside her and hurled it. The bottle exploded against Natasha's wrist. The gun fired wild, the shot deafening in the enclosed space. The weapon clattered to the ground. Natasha screamed, clutching her bleeding hand. Marcus lunged for the gun, and Claire appeared at the top of the stairs, security guards behind her. She tried to kill them, Claire shouted, pointing at Natasha. I heard everything. I recorded everything. She held up her phone, screen glowing with a recording in progress. Natasha's face went white. The security guards, apparently not all of them were in Vivian's pocket, rushed down and restrained Natasha as she tried to run. The scandal exploded across every news outlet within hours. Vivian Langston, arrested for conspiracy and obstruction of justice. Natasha Crane, charged with attempted murder, fraud, and a decade-old conspiracy. The recording of Vivian's confession, combined with Claire's testimony and the financial records, created an airtight case. Eva's conviction was overturned. The state offered her a settlement, blood money that would never erase the lost years, but would at least give her a foundation to rebuild. She stood in front of the Langston mansion one last time, watching as news vans camped outside, as Vivian was led away in handcuffs, as the empire crumbled. Marcus found her there. "It's over," he said quietly. "No," Eva replied. "It's just starting." They stood in silence for a long moment. "I'm sorry," Marcus finally said, "for not fighting harder, for not questioning, for not being better." Eva looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the boy she'd loved, but also the stranger he'd become. "I can't forgive you yet," she said honestly. "Maybe not ever. What happened? It changed me, Marcus. I'm not the girl you knew." "I know," his voice cracked, "and I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to know that I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make this right, even if you never speak to me again." Eva nodded slowly. "Good." She turned to leave, but paused. "Marcus?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for helping me find the truth." "It's the least I could do." She walked away from the mansion, from the past, from the boy who'd once been her entire world. And as she disappeared into the city, Ava Monroe, survivor, fighter, woman reborn, smiled. Because she'd walked into hell and dragged the truth out with her bare hands. And now, finally, she was free. 6 months later. Ava sat in a small coffee shop, laptop open, working on her memoir. A book about survival, about justice, about refusing to let the powerful bury the truth. The bell above the door chimed. Claire Langston walked in, looking lighter somehow, happier. She'd cut ties with her mother, started working at a nonprofit, found her own path. "Hey," Claire said, sliding into the seat across from Eva. "How's the book coming?" "Slowly," Eva smiled. "Turns out processing trauma on the page is harder than I thought." "Take your time. The world can wait." They ordered coffee. They talked about safe things, work, weather, new Netflix shows. The friendship they'd lost was rebuilding, brick by careful brick. "Marcus asked about you," Claire said carefully. "He's in therapy now, trying to figure out who he is without his mother's voice in his head." "Good for him," Eva said, meaning it. "He still loves you, you know." "I know." Eva looked out the window at the city moving past. All those lives, all those stories, all those people fighting their own battles. But love isn't enough, not after everything. "No," Claire agreed, "but maybe it's a start." Eva thought about that, about forgiveness, about second chances, about whether some broken things could ever be truly repaired. She didn't have the answer yet. But for the first time in 10 years, she had time to figure it out. As they finished their coffee and parted ways, Eva walked through the city with her head high. She'd survived prison. She'd survived betrayal. She'd survived the people who'd tried to erase her. And now she was writing her own story. Not as a victim, but as a survivor. As a woman who'd stared into the face of injustice and refused to blink. And that, Eva thought as the sun broke through the clouds, was the greatest revenge of all. The truth doesn't need volume, it just needs patience. and the courage to never stop speaking. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment telling us what justice means to you. And remember, no matter how long lies are buried, the truth always finds its way home. Thank you for being here. Until next time, stay strong, stay hopeful, and never stop fighting for what's right. This is Story Pulse. Subscribe and we'll see you in the next one.